Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Timothy here with Mana Rocks, and for those of you who are used to watching videos on my channel, this video is going to be a little bit different. For those who don't know, I am the co-designer of a Peasant Cube that has been created for drafting on Magic Arena, and as such, I've wanted to make a few videos with that cube in mind. So if you are not part of that cube community, this might seem a little strange, but it's been a great project to work on, and I would like to make some videos geared towards that draft environment. If you're interested in checking out the cube or joining the community, I'll have some links posted in the comments below where you can see the cube list and get a little more information on Peasant Cube and Cubing on Arena. As for this video, we're going to be exploring the top 5 cards in our list that players should be drafting highly, or rather, if you're a newcomer to this cube, these are cards based on experience that either do not wheel or give you an advantage that you might be missing out on if you don't pick them when you see them. Let's go ahead and jump right in. First up on our list is what I consider to be the easy best mana dork in the entire cube, Llanowar Elves. For context, Llanowar Elves is the only 1 mana accelerant in the entire list since we don't have access to cards like Gilded Goose or other rare accelerants, and Arboreal Grazer is just not a very good card. For reference, there are 6 2-drop mana dorks, which for the most part are all interchangeable, and while many mana curves will play out the same regardless of whether you start with Llanowar Elves or another 2-drop mana dork, the Elves provides explosive draws that no other card can. For example, turn 1 Llanowar Elves into, let's say, turn 2 Cultivate or Llanowar Visionary lets you play a potential 5-drop on turn 3. Sometimes, simply playing a turn 2 Thrashin' Bronodon into turn 3 Crocodile of the Crossin' will bury your opponent before they get their game plan going. Green-based ramp decks thrive off of their early game mana dorks, and Llanowar Elves is the irreplaceable part of that deck that you'll want to be sure to pick up as early as possible. Here's a tip in general about drafting a cube. Typically, there are no bad cards, and by the end of the draft, you'll have somewhere around 28 to 30 playables, meaning you'll have to cut some perfectly fine cards that will sit in your sideboard and never see play. Because of this feature, it's important to value lands highly while drafting almost any cube, not just this one. For the purposes of our cube, there are 3 dual-color lands for each color pair: a shock land, a scry land, and a check land. On top of this, we have 3 functional copies of Evolving Wilds. My advice to new players, you should be taking these nearly every time you see them if you intend to play those colors. It's often correct to take a land over replacement level card for your deck, mostly just to smooth out your mana, but also because those lands can fill the spots of the cards you would otherwise be relocated into the sideboard. When you draft more lands, you get to play more cards that you've drafted. On top of that, never underestimate just how bad the typical 8-9 mana base is for limited, and how a single mana fixin' land can even things out. If you intend to play mana-intensive cards like Basilica Bellhaunt or Sunder Shaman, these lands go a long way. Additionally, while it's not a major focus of the cube, 3+ color decks can exist, in which case mana fixin' lands are top priority. Draft them highly. If experience tells me anything, they will not wheel in a typical draft. One of the constraints we have to work with due to being a Peasant Cube is that we don't get to play with effects that are typically only printed at higher rarities. One such category of effects is sweepers or board wipes, which have a pretty large delta in effectiveness between higher rarities and the commons and uncommons that we're working with. As such, the cube lacks catch-all effects that you might see in constructed formats. For example, white basically loses the ability to wrath the board at lower rarities, while red and black operate in different territory than they would in constructed. With all that being said, it's important to note how effective even uncommon sweepers can be in the right matchup. While red and black are in fact the removal colors, they struggle with decks that can outnumber their removal. There's nothing quite as annoying as a player kicking a Saproling migration and the black control deck having to burn through multiple removal spells to deal with all the tokens. Thankfully, sweepers can deal with all of them for the price of 1 card, and usually take out other threats along the way. Here's a big hint for new time drafters of our cube. Aggro decks will crush you if you don't have a plan. Part of your anti-aggro plan can simply be making sure you draft Flame Sweep when you see it, as a single sweeper of this power level can swing an entire game against a dedicated aggro deck. This is noteworthy from the aggro player's perspective too. While the cube isn't exactly rife with sweepers, they do exist and they can shut you down, so have a backup plan against them. Cards like Adanto Vanguard and Seasoned Howlblade can play around a red sweeper nicely, while the 2 black sweepers might be a bit more difficult to deal with. If I knew my deck was going to struggle with aggro, I'd be sure to pick these sweepers up when I saw them. There's a little bit of an unwritten rule that we don't tend to include cards that are meant exclusively as sideboard cards. You won't see things like Ether Gusts or Plummets hanging around our cube because while they are quite good when they come out of the sideboard, they dilute the card pool and they end up more often than not sitting in someone's sideboard for an entire draft. That being said, there's another secret to the cube. Enchantments tend to be powerful, and they can be difficult to deal with. Every color has access to at least 1 or 2 powerful enchantments that can take over a game on their own, and while there are answers to enchantments in the cube, they aren't exactly plentiful. Enter my old friend, the Reclamation Sage. Never, in my experiences with the cube, have I seen a Reclamation Sage that hasn't hit the board and destroyed some crucial artifact or enchantment. Yes, Thrash and Bronodon can do this too, but you never really want to sacrifice your Thrash and Bronodon. Reclamation Sage always gets its man, whether that's a Faith's Fetters to free up one of your fatties, or an Ominous Seas that's about to spawn an 8/8. Rec Sage is one of the cleanest answers to enchantments in the cube. There's nothing quite as satisfying as sniping down one of the demigods with Rec Sage and leaving the 2/1 body on board to block something else. The main lesson here is to be prepared for enchantments, with Reclamation Sage being the best way to do this. If you're drafting green, take it. If you're drafting enchantments, it might be in your best interest to hate draft it, which is not something I advocate for often. So let me go ahead and let you in on my favorite archetype in the cube. There's this little card called All That Glitters, and blue-white has a sub-theme of artifacts and enchantments sprinkled throughout the cube. The All That Glitters deck can completely crush an opponent if built correctly, and while it's a very fun strategy to try out, it's a bit of a glass cannon. When your glittered creature gets removed, your deck often falls apart, and it's pretty easy to get 2 for 1 playing this sort of strategy. That brings me to number 5 on the list, which is instant speed protection spells. I'm talking about cheap interactive ways to blank removal spells, things like Dive Down, Ranger's Guile, and Fight as One. While I bring up the All That Glitters deck as a prime example of a deck that wants these sort of effects, I believe these cards should be picked highly for almost any creature deck. Remember, we're playing cube here. The removal is efficient and plentiful. You will be playing against people who have multiple good removal spells in their decks, and being able to effectively negate a timely removal spell for 1 mana can keep you ahead when you're there, or stop you from falling behind when you're not. This is especially true for green creature decks, which often tap out for a 6 or 7 drop creature, only to have it murdered for 3 mana. Ranger's Guile goes a long way here. Blue and white have a few more options with cards like Selfless Savior and Siren Stormtamer, but they're easy to play around, so the instants can provide backup protection for your key creatures. If your deck really resolves around sticking a key creature or aura, make sure you have a way to protect it once you find it. As a bonus number 6, we have Gifted Aetherborn. You don't actually need to draft this card highly, it'll just tilt Chris if he never gets to play with it. Alright everybody, that's the list. I hope this has been insightful to new cubers in our community, and I look forward to drafting with all of you soon. Remember, if you want more information about the cube, check out the links below. I'll likely be doing more content like this on my YouTube channel moving forward, so feel free to drop a subscribe below for more videos like this, or find me on Twitter at mtg_manarocks. I've been working out some kinks with video quality lately, which is why you probably haven't seen many videos from me on here, but I'm still here and I look forward to hearing from all of you. Thanks, and I'll catch you all next time.